This is the Real Health Podcast brought to you by Riordan Clinic. Our mission is to bring you the latest information and top experts in functional and integrative medicine to help you make informed decisions on your path to real health.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Health Podcast here at the Riordan Clinic. I am Dr. Drew, and I am joined by my mentor, Dr. Ron Hunninghake. Today, we are actually tackling a very large topic, something that has been plaguing the Western world for decades here, metabolic syndrome. So, Dr. Ron, what is metabolic syndrome, and where do we even start?
Well, metabolic syndrome is where people's metabolism has gone totally off kilter. And as a result, their blood pressure is up, their weight is up, their sleep is down, their motivation is down, their depression is up, they feel helpless. Certainly, there is a defined metabolic syndrome, high blood pressure, percent body fat, liver problems. It's a complex array of manifestations of the body just not functioning well. Metabolically, it's going into a tailspin, basically.
Yeah, I've always been taught that, metabolic syndrome comes before diabetes. But as research continues to emerge, we're finding that there's little signs and cues that your body is giving you even before you hit that metabolic syndrome. So here at the Riordan Clinic, we always talk about trying to find that health. What do you see as, some sort of structure or some sort of plan as far as trying to get ahead of these things?
Well, as we talked about earlier, it's so indigenous, and I think it's 70% of the population now is dealing with this metabolic syndrome. And it's our whole environment, the food environment that we live in, the stress environment. People are not sleeping well. People are frustrated, tired, anxious. And all of these things contribute. They kind of, and the fact that we have a difficult time finding healthy food.
Yeah.
We're watching TV late at night, not sleeping well. We wake up the next morning, we're tired again. We're not motivated. We want some kind of a high calorie thing or a coffee or sweets to kind of get us going. And then that leads to hypoglycemia, low blood sugar. So people are on this horrible merry-go-round that they can't seem to get off of. And then they keep gaining weight, and people are looking for the quick fix, and it's really not a quick fix.
I think that is a major point that needs to be made with every single co-learner, every single person in the United States even. Because like you said, 70% of the population is estimated to have issues with some sort of metabolic health. And, everything just listed off is all lifestyle. But with the society that we live in, I mean, how do we curb those issues? How do we, move the needle in the right direction?
I think, first of all, people need to want to find out what are the root causes of this. And I use the word causes. Then they want to know, okay, well, these are some complex things. Where can we begin? Where can we start? The GLP-1 revolution has been, I think, an important factor. It has showed us that, it is possible to reverse the syndrome, but it's kind of doing it with a pretty heavy sledgehammer, so to speak.
Yeah.
And it works, but it has side effects. It's expensive. If people go off the medicine, their weight comes back, their blood pressure comes back. So I think it can be a useful tool to help people get started. But I think the real question is, what are the key numbers that we need to have people start looking at that can help them define that they're making progress? Because a lot of people get started and it doesn't seem like anything is happening with whatever effort they're making.
Well, and I think that's using the numbers, it's objective evidence. It's something that's not biased necessarily. It is A or is it B, and I think being able to lean on that is helpful for a lot of people. It's not just the number on the scale, but it's a multitude of other factors here. So you actually wrote an article. We actually have multiple articles coming out soon in the Health Hunters talking about metabolic scoring and just metabolic health in general. But as metabolic syndrome here, you have 5 different early warning risk factors. And could you just kind of go through that? And what does that mean to people?
Well, these are some things that everyone knows about. Like, we know that high blood pressure is a problem.
Right.
And that's something that you can measure yourself at home.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be a measurable thing. Blood sugar, we're now in an era where people can wear a blood sugar monitor and get every 5 minutes, get their blood sugar.
Oh, yeah.
If you really want to get specific, or you can use hemoglobin A1C. There's a number of ways that you can monitor that. Body fat, you can just put a tape measure around your abdomen and get a pretty good idea of where you are with that. There are some really neat scales that have come out now that you can buy, which will give you body composition, so you can very precisely start to measure that. There's some blood tests there, like the triglycerides and the HDL, which you'll have to do through your doctor, but those are relatively inexpensive. And once again, when you start putting these numbers together, now you're able to start to navigate these troubled waters.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're a ship being blown here and there, and everyone's got a quick fix. And this is not a quick fix issue. It's going to take some time for people to make the shift and to stay on track with their program, because it's very easy for people to get disillusioned. They can have a major stress happen in their lives, and the whole program just goes out the door.
Right. So something that you mentioned here, the waist circumference. Something that I always get asked is, so what about the BMI? So BMI and metabolic syndrome or metabolic scoring, it's not the same thing, correct? It's historically, at least, just kind of giving a little synopsis of this was something that was developed as a tool to be able to see who's at risk of developing some sort of metabolic dysfunction or dysregulation. And quite literally, overnight, millions of people became overweight or obese. And it's literally just a measure of your weight and your height. And there's a calculation, and that's it. But the problem is, it doesn't take the body composition like you talked about, percent fat and percent muscle. Muscle is incredibly dense. So you can have somebody who's a bodybuilder or has high amounts of muscle, and technically, according to their BMI, they're overweight.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense. So I love the fact that you talk about utilizing those machines that give you a full body composition.
Right.
The other thing that you mentioned here were a couple lab tests, is like the triglycerides and the HDL. I think we've seen those in the conventional lipid profile. But one thing you didn't mention, I just kind of wanted to get your reasons why behind it. Why not LDL? What's the deal with villainizing LDL over the years?
Well, it has been villainized, and basically the reason is that there is a drug that will bring it down, and our medical system tends to lean heavily on that medicine as the treatment for metabolic syndrome, or at least one facet of the metabolic syndrome. But I don't think it's the whole story. I mean, the body fat is based upon this whole syndrome. It's not just one type of fat that we're eating, though I will mention that we are eating a lot more of the fatty acids that come from oils. These oils, as opposed to saturated fats, these are the polyunsaturated fats. And if you eat seeds and other sources of seed oils, if you eat them raw or eat them cooked even, you're probably not doing any harm. But what's happened in our culture is we shifted from saturated fats to just polyunsaturated fats for everything, almost everything. And these polyunsaturated fats, the number of double bonds in them make them unstable. And when they shift from a what they call a cis to a trans, those oils cannot be utilized, and so they tend to build up in the body. So this is one of the causes, I think, of metabolic syndrome, is an overuse of the trans fats in our culture.
Right. So that kind of leads into the food chain system, which you mentioned earlier as well. So, going to the grocery store, it's kind of been talked about how if you want to stay healthy, stay to the periphery of the store, right? You go to the produce section, you go to the meat section, you get your dairy and then you get out as quick as possible and don't go down the aisles, right? Is that a good strategy, or are there other things you need to be looking out for when it comes to trying to figure out how to shop healthier and what you can do overall for your health?
Right. So here at the Riordan Clinic, for as long as I've been here, we've always emphasized whole foods, real foods. I sometimes say, look at the old farmer, not the modern farmer. The modern farmer's buying their groceries at the grocery store too, because they're busy. But the old farmer and the farm family, they had a garden and they had chickens and they had dairy cows, and it was not a low-fat diet that they were eating.
No, it was not.
And yet 100 years ago, the heart attack rate was very, very low. There in the original internal medicine book on all the various diseases, heart attacks were only 2 paragraphs because they were so rare. But in the last 100 years, now the amount of trans fats that we're eating now has increased from 1 pound per year per person to over 60 pounds per year per person.
Wow.
And so we think trans fats play a big role in heart disease, but it's not the only thing. I think the stress level has gone up. The old farmer used to get a lot of exercise and get up early and go to bed early, and the families were tight, and there was a lot of mutual help in the family. Nowadays, we're all scattered around and we watch TV late, and there's just so many things that have changed in our lifestyle that has promoted this metabolic disease epidemic in Western culture. It's just not America. All of Western culture is dealing with this, and then diabetes, heart disease, cancer, all these really serious things are down the road consequences of it.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a ubiquitous issue. And it is something that I think every nation's definitely taking a look at. But the approaches are all over the place. There is no one unified approach as far as here's this problem, this approach is going to fix it. And I think that's where the Riordan model could really set people up for success here, because we already want to individualize plans for every single co-learner anyways. So shifting over to that gear of, who would benefit from getting their metabolic health checked?
I think kids would get benefit because we have our kids they're living in a world that is mostly packaged foods and fast foods, and their level of activity is not as good as it used to be. Because now there still are pockets of good activity. I'm not down on all of it, but nevertheless, I think it should start in the school. Mm-hmm. There should be a metabolic program in the school.
Yeah.
My wife was a second grade teacher, and she couldn't believe the stuff that kids were bringing for their snacks, just packaged type things, because both parents are working now. They don't have time to cook a full meal. And then stress level, lack of sleep, all these things are affecting how our kids are now. They're dealing with obesity. They're dealing with blood sugar problems. They're dealing with hypoglycemia.
Yeah.
All these things that tie into metabolic syndrome.
Yeah. So the obesity rate has not just gone up for adults, it's gone up for kids as well. And that's something that you can see measurably over the past, you say 100 years, I would even just say the past 20 years.
Exponential.
Yes, exactly. And, we definitely want to improve the health of our younger generations. They are the future, but also for ourselves. When you look at developing some sort of metabolic program, what is your hope for how that looks, I guess?
Well, the idea of metabolic scoring is to take guilt out of the picture.
Yes.
Because this is not anyone's fault. It's basically a cosmic shift in just our whole lifestyle here in Western civilization. So first of all, we have to recognize that it is a very common problem, and that we need to deal with it early. But really at any age, though, you don't have to start when you're young, but you're probably more likely to change the course of the individual's life if they develop some good habits as a young person. So our schools have to support it as well. And, I don't know, but, sometimes the lunchroom, the stuff that's there is fast food stuff.
Right.
And so we need to get back to a really good meal that the kids have at school, and they need to have a good breakfast at home. And then we need to start getting people, maybe kids need to start weighing themselves at school.
Yeah.
We have academic standards. Why don't we have some, not just weight, but body composition weight?
Mm-hmm.
Because weights can sometimes be, it won't be accurate. So,
Right.
so putting this whole idea of metabolic scoring in the educational system, and then with adults, we have to create another kind of educational system, because I think we do think that group therapy is helpful, where people
Right.
help one another figure out how to change their lifestyles and how to get some exercise and how to buy whole foods, colorful foods, real foods, and how to do these measurements, because again, numbers are probably the best way to drive behavioral change.
Absolutely. And I also agree with the whole group therapy idea. Camaraderie is a very powerful tool for shifting your own lifestyle, making lifestyle changes. I always tell my co-learners that you have to do small things at first. Those small
Exactly.
things really do add up, because you cannot just completely change your lifestyle overnight or even within a week. It takes, so long to develop habits, and it's a lot easier to break those habits than it is to develop them, actually.
Right. Also, when I was in college, we were talking about the counterculture.
Yeah.
Health is the new counterculture.
It is. It is.
So if we can get people to realize it's okay to think differently about food in a way that's healthier, getting exercise in there, getting sleep regulated, working on relationships, stress. The biggest source of stress is dysfunctional relationships.
Absolutely.
But a lot of times those are coming because people are having hypoglycemia. When you have low blood sugar, you're going to get mad easier. And so all these things kind of come together. And if people could see this as really a turning point in their lives, rather than just a program.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go on a weight loss program. Well, we know that doesn't work very well. But if we can see that people see the value of really working on optimizing their metabolic health through scoring, rather than, finger waving,
Right.
that's going to be, I think, a more effective way.
So over the past 100 years or so, there has been a huge fad with weight loss and relationships with food and relying on different pharmaceuticals or other restrictive diets. I mean, you go through the different decades, and I feel like there's something different every decade since the 1930s, where we have worked on losing weight and thinking just moving the scale is the important thing. Nowadays, we talked about it from a cancer standpoint, about how cancer is a metabolic disease even, and how looking at metabolic health is not just, the number that's on the scale. We have to look at the whole picture too, because we've mentioned in a multitude of podcasts and other articles here that toxins play a role, hormone health plays a role. You've mentioned it multiple times here, sleep and stress management. I wrote an article last month about mental health, and mental health definitely plays a role into your relationship with food. So all of this is going to play a role, some more than others to certain co-learners, just depending on their individuality in their life. But how are we going to be able to balance that for each person all at once? And I think you really hit the nail on the head there. It is like that group therapy, is the camaraderie. So how can Riordan support that?
Well, I think one of the things that has become clear to me over the years, and probably why I'm at Riordan Clinic, is that I thought at one point I was going to become a psychiatrist. And I thought that would be a really good thing, until I found out that most of psychiatry, and this is not to put down psychiatry, but most of psychiatry, again, uses medication as a primary tool. And we now know those medicines create the metabolic syndrome.
Yeah.
So what are we going to put in the place of the medicines and all these other problems that we've talked about? And part of it is that we have to look upon this, I think, as a kind of societal PTSD.
Right.
And for people, that's post-traumatic stress disorder. I think anyone who's dealing with their weight, there's a PTSD element to that, where they're somehow blaming themselves or they're blaming someone else, or there's a blame factor in there that I think puts the brake on change.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think part of the idea of working with groups is that we can help people begin to see that, wait a minute, this hidden element here is a major factor in why people can't seem to make progress. And so let's talk about it. Let's pull it out of the deep, dark place in us and see what we can do to support one another, and then use the numbers, use our new knowledge about whole foods and detoxification and all the tools that we have been developing here at Riordan Clinic over all these years. Let's put those together in a program that we can help people heal from this whole metabolic disaster.
Oh, absolutely. Now, in the last few minutes here, I want to make sure that we touch on this, because you mentioned GLP-1s, and GLP-1s are huge. They are massive as far as the metabolic health of the Western world. And there's been a massive boom. There's more coming down the pike over the next couple of years as well that are coming out that have lofty promises. Is a GLP-1 appropriate for everyone?
Well, I think it is a potential valuable tool. And matter of fact, we could expand that term from just GLP-1 to what's called peptides, peptide therapies. And there's a lot of them that are coming down the pike that aren't here yet that look even better than GLP-1. But I think we have to get them in a way that they're not so expensive.
Right.
And that they're not looked upon as a magic bullet, but that they can facilitate a true change in a person. But if they don't do all this other stuff that we talked about, there's the danger that they're going to fall off the wagon, and it's going to be that same old, where they're back on this up and down thing again. So, but I do think they're a very powerful tool, and I think we should definitely make that a part of the program.
Absolutely. And I think it's just goes to speak to the individuality of every care plan for each co-learner. Semaglutide might be good for one person, tirzepatide might be good for another person. Someone who has more issues from the mental health side of things, or from the dopamine pathway. I mean, there's other drugs out there like Contrave that might actually be good for them. So it's not just a GLP-1 is good because you're overweight. You have to look at the whole metabolic health, not just the weight like I talked about. But I agree with you. I think it's absolutely a tool. It is a slow process. In fact, it is recognized now by some pretty big reputable organizations within the healthcare that GLP-1s are considered long-term medicines, meaning it's at least 6 months. But you can only titrate up the dose like every 4 weeks anyways. So when somebody comes in looking for that magic bullet, that quote unquote magic bullet out there right now, GLP-1s, is still a slow process. And you would be doing a disservice to any co-learner if you didn't talk about and support the lifestyle changes when it comes to, how to go to the grocery store and shop healthy, how to cook with whole foods instead of convenient prepackaged and pre-made meals. How do you correct your sleep imbalances? How do you correct the stressors in your life? And then all of this goes together in a program that we are wanting to develop here. So putting that all together, this is true integrative medicine with one of the biggest epidemics our population across the world even is facing today.
We want to honor the uniqueness of the individual, but employ the power of the group.
Correct.
Because group therapy can be very powerful, but yet each person within the group is going to have their own challenges, their own biochemistry. And that's where Dr. Riordan recognized that laboratory testing can help differentiate what's unique to the individual. But then as a group, we can emphasize what general lifestyle changes need to occur and be sustained if the individual is going to get back to a truly healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely. Accountability is everything, and having friends helping you along the way is going to help with the success rate. So metabolic program, metabolic scoring is coming to Riordan, and this is something that I hope everybody is able to check out at some point in time. Thank you for joining us today and answering all my questions.
Yeah, very good. Very good.
So we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Real Health Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. You can also find all of the episodes and show notes over at realhealthpodcast.org. Also, be sure to visit riordanclinic.org, where you will find hundreds of videos and articles to help you create your own version of real health.